This channel is supported by Truefire. Truefire is an online library
enough. You can get the Truefire All Access Pass for as cheap as they ever do it, the $99 thing. So just jump and do that if you're looking for the best price you can get Truefire All Access for.
So I saw Dan and Mick on That Pedal Show had done a demo because I was interested in this Celestion Peacekeeper. Now in that video I thought they kind of actually happened across what I think kind of cuts to the core of why guitarists are maybe not that interested in turning down. And I guess this little clip here is probably going to best demonstrate what happens. So I think at a certain volume, this thing happens where the guitar and the amp together sort of start to actually interact in a way that is very different to anything else. Now, what you're going to see in this clip is me engaging a Fryette Power Station, so I can bypass that or turn it on. And I don't know, let me know in the comments whether you think some amount of this interaction kind of goes away. What I'm noticing personally is that it's not an easy thing to necessarily control, and it's not necessarily a desirable thing for everything, but it is the thing that most clearly, I think, demonstrates to me what it might be about an amplifier and a guitar that people are so sort of addicted to. And it's this kind of thing where, you know, just playing simple things lightly can really, everything feels alive about it. It's like there's like this network of stuff going on. It's like a feedback system, isn't it, really? And because it's kind of at this tipping point where like things can break into feedback quite effortlessly, you're then being a more sensitive player in many ways, where it's like, okay, I'm turning volume down, I'm picking lighter because this thing is basically alive. I think that's the trouble, and that's what is going away so many times if we try some of these things. So like in this video I'm going to try the Fryette Power Station. Now there is, once you have access to like the variable attenuation, then you can actually get some of this back, but it necessarily seems to increase with volume, obviously. Now, another thing that I don't think people try, and I'd be really interested, but based on an experiment that I'm going to try later on in the video, I'm going to presume that if you use, you know, like the Joe Bonamassa thing, those clear sonic shields, the Perspex Shields that go in front of an amp, that actually will interfere with this guitar to amp interaction. I think it must do, because I'm going to show you something later on with a towel, because I kind of just read that some people just tried just chucking a towel in front, and I think even that made a bit of a difference in terms of, well, that meant that my guitar wouldn't feed back quite as much. Accepting that, to be honest, the amp on 6 is too loud. The attenuator is fine. So what happens if I kind of put this here, I've got a towel, just putting it over it, because I was kind of reading online about some of these ideas that people are having. Now this is one that I got from Israel in like 2016. Do I still get feedback? Not really. Now that is the point for me, that anything that I've done here, as soon as I do something to attenuate things, that thing that makes the amp very much like an amp kind of goes away. Like even just sticking towels on, I wasn't sure what to expect with this. So it almost feels like anything you do is going to kind of take away from this interaction, is basically my conclusion here. Because I was thinking, well, how come guitarists don't try some of the other things? Now, tonally, if you were looking for something to attenuate, I actually quite like what this is doing. Like, it's not bad actually from a tonal point of view. I'm guessing that over time that is going to absolutely cook the amp though. Now, other things that I think are underrated in terms of things that I've not really even tried before. What about if you took your amplifier and you, instead of angling it straight forward on the stage, it's going at the back of your legs anyway. I think this is the problem for a lot of us, is that we are struggling to hear ourselves because we're not really pointing it in our direction. It's behind us. So I think this is a very valid point that, you know, we need to kind of be communicating with our sound men better, I think, because they're human too. But anyway, yeah, we're pointing it most of the time at our legs. So some people have obviously for years cottoned on to this idea, and they raise the amplifier so that it's closer to your head volume. You get a bit of a better idea of what the tone is actually like then as well. The other thing, Fender figured it out ages ago. I don't know why more people don't do this, but building in the amp stand, so like on this Pro Reverb, you know, that's there. You can tilt the amp back, and it means that you're able to hear it more clearly whilst not necessarily beaming things straight down the pipe. Another thing I did the other day, the sound guy had 2 subs and monitors, but they were like in a stack on the stage. I positioned my cab specifically behind one of them so that if he's standing out front of house, he's actually not going to be getting much of that Tonex cab going forward. It wasn't loud anyway, but even if I had a loud amp, I'm presuming that because of the way that I had it placed, he would have in fact been hearing more of the front of house stage. It would probably have been less of an issue for him if I had a real amp in that situation. So other ideas, what about facing the amp kind of across stage? And I guess you have to be a little bit careful on this because it depends where you are placed on stage, but some people on like Reddit and stuff have talked about firing at a wall. And I guess that's something like a cheap version of an isolation cab. Does that interfere with your interaction with the guitar? I'm going to presume again, yes. I tried turning this around facing that wall so it was coming back this way. That actually, because this is an open back cab, was pretty much the same as having it facing this way in terms of volume in the room. It was maybe a little bit less piercing, but not much. Essentially, the audience and some unlucky person who's directly in the beam of the speaker, one obvious thing that I've never really tried, but I have been on a gig where someone was facing it sort of sideways across the stage, which then means you're just blasting the rest of the band. So if your deluxe reverb on 6 is the sound, I'm not really sure what you're supposed to do about this, because all of these solutions that I've tried here do take away from it a bit. It just seems that volume is the thing that is important. Then the other thing is, if you bring down other volumes of stuff on stage, I think, so like if you're playing with like a quieter drummer, you do really notice how loud you are. And I think this is the other thing, if you're playing with a really noisy drummer, it can be easy to have your stage volume at a pretty unreasonable level. Likewise, if you're playing with another guitarist who likes to crank their amp, I totally get where sound guys are coming from, where it's like, well, everything is so loud, there's really nothing I can do with it. So I think there is a conversation that needs to keep happening, really, because I think there is a way that we can use amps without it having to be a thing that pisses off everyone. Those Peacekeeper speakers seem like an interesting idea to me, but I think in some cases it might just be like too quiet for live use. And this was the other idea for me, was like, what about smaller amps? I was looking into a Princeton or a Champ, but then I looked into it a little deeper, and once you start to really turn those things up really loud, those apparently get to about 100 dB anyway. So it's almost like even the small amps, if you're really looking for a cranked amp tone, are going to be a little bit too loud for some of these situations. So I guess you kind of just come back to the situation where you're going to have to rely really on pedals or a modelling solution or an attenuator, all of which I don't think are quite the same as plugging straight into your amp. So I think Dan and Mick at That Pedal Show, as normal, are pretty kind of on point with this, where it's like, well, anything really that you do to kind of take away from like the volume of the amp seems to also take away that kind of guitar to amp interaction, which I think if you've tried it, there is definitely something pretty special about it, where this is like a deluxe reverb on 6. Turning it around this way didn't really make much difference to the volume in the room, so this would be something I potentially wouldn't even mind trying, but it didn't make a huge amount of difference and it also didn't make too much difference to the way that the guitar was interacting. So that might be an idea. Again, a sound man said to me on earlier in the weekend, you can have an amp if it's facing towards you. So like, this would be essentially what the audience might get. And if it was facing towards you as a guitar player, then maybe you'd have the thing turned down a bit lower. Another sound guy that I was interacting with really liked that I was using on the Tonex cab that I was using on that gig, that I was using the kickback stands, because it meant that there wasn't a beam going directly to what he was hearing at front of house. So I think there are some real ideas that we potentially can explore in order to bring more amps back onto stages if we want that. Smaller amps with lower wattages, I think, still have some of the same issues really that you might have with the deluxe reverb, where it's like, actually, when you start to turn those things up, they get up to about 100 dB. So I'm interested to maybe try that Peacekeeper idea, but again, is that going to be too quiet? I'm not sure.